Joining us right now from an undisclosed location somewhere around the world is Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing?
Praise Paul, God bless you. How do you hear me?
Man, you're coming in high, wall
Good,
to wall
good,
and
good. Very good.
treetop tall, baby. It sounds wonderful today.
Well, it's good to be here, Pastor Paul.
Now crank it back
Be
up there.
here.
I don't know where you went. Crank it back
No,
up.
I'm good to go. I was mumbling.
Okay. Mike, good to have you here. It's great to have you here tonight.
Good to be here.
Code Red, Mike. Code Red. Scientists are warning that climate change has pushed the Earth's vital signs to record extremes.
Oh, coming clean, are they?
Coming clean. So what would make them come clean? What's is it because they won't be able to control the narrative soon?
The election.
Ah. Oh, Mike, I got some oceanfront property out there in Arizona if you want it. Hey, what about this 1 mile wide asteroid that they're just now starting to tell us about couldn't see it because of the glare of the sun? Are they coming clean on this?
Part of the junk that's around the opposite side of the sun must have been ejected. I think that's a rogue. There's still something back there.
Uh-huh.
Something big is back there. And there's no way for anybody to see it. Optics can't see it because of the sheer, bombardment of photons, and everything is washed out if you turn the all that sensor data too low. So yeah, they had to come out with something. I believe that people will begin to see early in the morning, well, probably in the afternoons now, some sort of distortion of the sun at a particular time in the day. And so they have to come up with something to justify what people are about to begin to notice in the heavens. They're stalling. They can't. It's not something you can come out and just tell everybody, because people would they would panic. Listen, if people can panic over politics and almost kill each other over politics, what would they do if their lives were threatened from some sort of external source? They couldn't deal with that.
No.
And that would send too many people over the edge.
So, Mike, what you're saying is there's something much bigger than this 1 mile wide asteroid. That's we couldn't see because of the glare of the sun. You're saying there's something much bigger than that. So is this like
something. But you know what, Pastor Paul, the nature of the solar system, a lot of people believe that somehow, things coalesced, like the Earth coalesced, the moon coalesced, and with some of the reports coming out of just the raw material of the moon that is so different from Earth, right? That's going to mess people up. Some of these old ideologies they're going to be hard to break, because people are taught a specific way of how things are. And it's very difficult to introduce anything new, because we have been on this track of learning, just reaching space actually to learn about certain things out there. And when you start telling people that, there are other bodies around Saturn, and there are, the moon had a complement, and all these different things, it's going to be hard for people to swallow. It's just fortunate that we live in the days when people will see it.
when you say people will see it, are you saying we're living in the days that people will see it? That you just said right then that us or this generation of people are going to actually see it themselves and see the effects of it. Is that right?
Oh yeah, they'll see the moon uncovered, and you know what? It's a good thing, Pastor Paul, because right now if people talked about the moon, they said, well, the moon is just some big rock. You have some people that would say, okay, but you can't tell people the moon is anything else because there's no proof. Now, but when it's revealed, right, what it will do is it will keep people from coming up with these instant rebuttals. And I'm talking about Christians, right? They wouldn't come up with rebuttals, and it would kind of lead them into this a better path of truth. There's nothing worse than believing in a foundational set of falsehoods, right? Something that's not quite real. Like if we had horse and buggy, what if we believed that the horse and buggy was the fastest thing we'd ever have, right? We'd be stuck. We couldn't advance. A lot of people would not have, we wouldn't have a proper perspective of end times events based on horse and buggy. That wouldn't work, right? So the moon is the same way.
Are you saying when you say the moon when the moon is uncovered. I mean, that, like, help me understand what you're saying there.
Uncovered. It's covered right now with a lot of powdered dust and 2 layers of a rock type substance. When it's uncovered, right, it's going to give people will reevaluate what they believe that existence really is. In other words, they will come closer to the truth. They will.
When we uncover the moon or dig deeper into the moon?
No, it will uncover itself. We're not going to do it. It will be uncovered though. It's just one of those events that will take place.
Well, this would have to be a massive event. I mean, some kind of insane event to uncover the moon.
We're going to have some very strange effects that happen. For example, we'll have photon rings that will come into the solar system. Now that seems like some sort of benign type of description for something, but imagine a ring you cannot see, you can detect, you cannot see it, and it only activates in the presence of atmosphere, right? And it only reacts by way of individual spectrum when introduced to the sun's photons, right?
Okay.
Then everybody will start to see that ring. Well, this ring has a lot of force behind it, and it will begin to shake loose quite a few things. The moon's going to be one of those things. It's bouncing around out there now. They can detect it. They didn't quite know what it was. It's almost like like somebody has a fan, waving a fan continuously, and whatever it touches, it somewhat shakes loose. That's a lot of force mixed in with this with that ring, that photonic ring.
All right, now you mentioned January 5th, and of course, obviously, we get emails every day. Okay, do you know what Mike's talking about? Can you give us more? Can you get more information from Mike on this January 5th situation? And you said this was the first of 17 different dates. I take it that are going to take place in the year of 2023.
Yeah, you'll notice the scientific community. Well, I can't say them. The guys who pay the scientific community will likely influence people to come out with reports and findings to explain or to mitigate what we're about to go through. Climate change, what they're calling climate change, is only a small portion of what we're about to go through. And again, even with climate change, do humans contribute? Yes. But humans are not on other planets heating them up. Venus is continuously heating up. Saturn is heating up. Jupiter is changing. Mars is altering. We have all these things happening because something is perturbing the normal conditions that everything has been in. So everything is changing. And around January 5th, we're going to have something enter our solar system. We're going to experience some effects, and they may be real drastic in certain areas. Some effects from spatial anomalies. I'm going to call them that. As we get closer to that day, I'm sure that we can define them even better, because I would like for people to have some sort of awareness. It's like if you'd like to know if a tornado was coming,
right?
Even if you were not in the way of it, you'd want to know what that noise is, right? It helps. It gives a person some calm. But Pastor Paul, I suspect that people will stand around just like this in a very short time. They're going to say, I wish I had more time to prepare. I wish I would have known. They're going to look around as some sort of calamitous event that happened to them, and they're going to regret not taking anything seriously, right? Not being even mentally prepared to deal with these brand new circumstances we're going to find ourselves in.
So what I'm hearing you say, you said, be prepared. I mean, I knew a hurricane was coming, okay? And I knew a hurricane was coming. And then last night, this thing gets here about 5 o'clock in the morning, and until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, there was this relentless wind, rain. I mean, I'm from Indiana, where I've lived through tornadoes, and they come and they're gone. But this thing is relentless, and this was a Category 1, and I'm 60 miles off the coast. So I'm thinking, My Lord, can you imagine being in a Cat 5 down there on the coast? You can't. It's insane. But it's relentless. But I knew it was coming. Right. Yet that did bring some calm to me, because I knew. Well, hey, I know what this is out there. It's a hurricane. So, Mike, when you say that this is people are going to be are people going to be very upset with authorities when some of these changes happen?
I think with themselves and with anybody, what happens with fear, Pastor Paul, is a pretty common event that takes hold of people. You have a lot of folks, for example, in combat, you have some tough folks that go into combat, but they're not really prepared for battle. They haven't thought it through all the way. And so when it takes place and they see things around them, they shrink in size because they're not prepared, right, to see what they're going to see. They minimize what they thought would happen. In other words, they lived by their own imagination. They did not face what was before them. And so they get out there in the middle of that field. The first thing they feel is fear. Well, if fear takes over, fear is like being paralyzed. You cannot function with fear, right? Everybody to a degree has felt fear. I felt severe fear before, and it is paralyzing. You can't do anything. You're no good to anybody when you're in a high state of fear and you're not thinking rationally. But if a person could understand what they're about to face, right, they can look around and see the same damage, the same effects, but they have a better grounding because they were prepared for what was coming. The one thing people, they don't want to be paralyzed by fear. If that happens, you lose your sense of who you are, what you were doing, and where you're going. And at that point, you may become a raving lunatic, or you could be compromised by emotions so much you end up harming more people than helping. So you get bad advice in the whole nine because fear is absolutely, it is paralyzing. It's something that I believe that nobody can really operate with fear. But if a person just like you in that hurricane, you knew it was a hurricane.
Yeah.
That takes away some of the fear, because fear is nothing more than us entertaining a set of imaginative lies in our heads, scenarios that never come true, and it paralyzes us. We get paralyzed from absolutely nothing. But if we're aware of certain things and we have a better grip on reality, we can then navigate things. We know what to pray for. We can go forward and help people. A time is coming. Fear is going to be great everywhere, right? And people will ultimately, with fear comes violence.
Yes.
Violence. You can have a peaceful person. If that person is overcome with fear, they will absolutely destroy anything near them, taking no thought of it because they're in a high state of fear. They've totally lost their mental faculties, and they can no longer hold on to any type of reality. So we don't want that to happen to anybody who is a believer in Christ, and they shouldn't be in that position. One way they won't be in that position is if they entertain prophecy and truth, really prepare for it. Because I'll tell you something, for what's coming, it takes at least 10 years of a person's life to truly be prepared for it. You can't get prepared in a couple of months or a year or 2 years. You can't do that. It will take a long time, which means some of the folks who have been seriously considering prophecy for a long time, they're going to have to stabilize other folks around them that are Christian. They're going to have to stabilize
emotionally,
but at least they're there.
So you're saying emotionally, we're going to have to stabilize people and say, hey, look, just relax. This was prophecy.
Yep.
And us that have been watching, the Bible says, watch and pray, and so we've been watching, we've been praying, we've been analyzing, we've been recognizing. And even with our best efforts, we're still going to be kind of caught off guard, is what I'm hearing you say to some degree. But at least we'll be more stable. Our world won't be coming to a crashing end because we know in who we believe. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. We can still be of help to other folks around us instead of being crippled by fear ourselves. Fear is it's just not a good thing. And we're going to need that with this time coming. If something were to happen like a meteor storm, when we start having meteor storms, say you're in a place and you have to look around and get people to a safe place to go during that time. They don't want to be outside. You're going to have all of your mental, strength, conditioning, and everything else to actually find a location where they can go and put them in there real quick and calm them down, especially the children. I'm always thinking about the kids.
Yeah.
Parents have a breakdown, and sometimes they don't really think about the children. If the parents do not break down, guess what? That child will not break down, right? Because a parent is that child's stability. So, and we just have to entertain those things. We've run out of time where we have this long period of time where nothing happens, where we can debate over theory and everything else. That's gone. In fact, nobody has a debate now. They're about to see it. We're living in those times. It's forming all around people.
You know, this report I just read earlier, of course, it's called Code Red. Scientists warn that climate change has pushed the Earth's vital signs to record extremes. They didn't go into they didn't, and it was released on October 26th, just a few days ago, and was done by 14 world scientists who said these things. They said, look, of the 35 planetary vital signs, 16 of them are in extreme record conditions, increasing frequency of extreme heat events, greater prevalence of mosquito-borne dengue viruses and pandemics, rising global tree cover loss because of fires, carbon dioxide levels reaching 418 parts per million, the highest on record, heat waves, fires, floods, massive storms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. The specter of climate change is at the door and pounding hard. That has really nothing to do with man. They're recognizing that these are extreme droughts and these things are beyond our control. Is that right, Mike?
Well, you know what? Of course, they're getting paid for this, right? So
Right.
they're getting paid. They're going to say exactly what they need to say to continue the money flow. But let's go ahead and face it: 1% of the total carbon on Earth, 1% of it is what we deal with. 1% of Earth's total carbon, that's about 44 gigatons, is above the surface and the oceans, on the land, in the atmosphere. The rest is subsurface. Now keep that in mind. The 99% of the carbon is subsurface. We're not dealing with that. So what happens when some sort of meteorite comes in? What happens when the ground is shaken loose by an earthquake? What happens when you have magma discharges in places, right? Then we're going to see a release of a real carbon release. Then we're going to see what can actually happen. We're only dealing with a 1% factor here, right? The
Right.
rest is in the crust of the Earth, and it can be let loose by a meteorite, by a nuclear explosion, by even some of the bombs that we have. It can be let loose by that. Now, that means it's taken at least 10 years to have some notable effects that people won't deny. I'll tell you this right now, but some of the weapons that we have, just with the weapons that we have, some of the smaller ones, if they were utilized, they would release probably, I'd say, about 2 or 3 more percent. That is 400 to 500 years worth of carbon would be released in a couple of hours, right? What do you think would happen to the clouds then? What do you think would happen to the animals then? What do you think would happen to the mixture in the atmosphere, right? You'd have electronic discharges in the atmosphere like nobody ever. We would need an EMP, because if it rises that fast, we're going to have static coverage all over the planet, which means electronic devices will blow. Ironically, we're still going to have a power grid, but everything that receives a signal, they're going to also receive that static potential, right? That's what will happen with war. And we sit at the doorway of war right now. At least people are using weapons. And at this point, it does not matter where they release those weapons. See, now when you know these things, and when you've run the scenarios on these things, when you've looked at the modeling on these things, it does not look good for anybody. It just doesn't. The Earth's natural processes right now will bring that 2% right to our faces, at least by 2023.
What?
So that's just not a good thing, right? So we're looking at hyper changes in the atmosphere, the weather, the ocean, the land masses, everything. That's what we're looking at. So here we are.
I'm trying to understand this static atmosphere. I know you've talked about an ash atmosphere. And just recently, Mike, you know that there was a meteorite that hit a house up there in Northern California, burn it down. One of our online members, what was the person's name? Their daughter was living there in Salem, Washington, when something exploded outside her house and shattered the windows near the baby's crib. The news media came out to see about it, and it's like there's some kind of like small meteors or something are crashing. I mean, is this what you're saying? Pretty soon you're not going to be able to hide this anymore?
They won't. They won't. You know what, Pastor Paul, I have certain colleagues that went into insurance, and for the last 30 years, we talked back and forth. I never said anything about insurance and micrometeorite coverage, right?
No, you haven't.
Every single day, somebody's dying from micrometeorites every day, and that's what it used to be. Now it's escalating. Insurance companies are running out of money. They're
Yeah.
running out of money, and that's going to change. That within itself is causing a little bit of hardship in several areas. But I've never said anything about that except for on your show, not ever to anybody, because it was something I would just track, so I would know the truth of what was happening in the environment. And well, that percentage of folks who are impacted by micrometeorites, it's increasing, and we're talking about death. All right, that's what we're talking about, death. People dying from being hit by micrometeorites. It happens every single day, but the concentrations are starting to go up, right? So
Yeah.
the number is increasing. And it's not something you can forecast. It's not something you can see most often. It just happens. And that number is going up. People are dying more by this.
The guy's name is James Foster. He's been with us 4 or 5 years, and he's been a member of this online church. His daughter Erica, living in Salem, Oregon, and actually the news media, local media there, went there and interviewed her and showed you where the glass, and then showed you the spot where something hit, and they couldn't find anything, but you see the hole in the ground where.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that could that be from just a little small pebble?
Oh yeah, because normally people die from tiny, teeny pieces, right? They look like somebody shot a bullet from the sky down to the ground, right? Or you may have something lodged in somebody's bumper that actually melted the aluminum on the car frame, and it's still lodged in there, right? Little tiny pieces, dimed size rocks are killing people every single day, and there's a large concentration in Mexico, and they keep people out of certain zones in Mexico and the USA for that very reason. They won't allow anybody to build houses in these areas because they're drawn to these specific areas in the earth. But that number is increasing, and that's normal. Can you imagine, right? As we continue on day to day, we go into a cluster of things, right? The
Yeah.
rock size is gradually growing.
Yep.
Because we're going right into an unknown part of existence we've not been in before, and it's pretty messy. It's
So
really messy.
now you've been talking about these two cloud clusters and meteor clusters, and apparently those things are coming. We're getting on the edges of it. We're starting to get into the edges of the cloud. I take it, and so the increase of this is going to get worse and worse and worse or upon the earth. Is that part of this January 5th deal, or
Well, January 5th is it's an identifiable, let's call it a big dust cloud, but this dust cloud has dust in it the size of me and you, right? It's a big dust cloud, and it's coming into it's pushed. It was pushed. They think it was pushed by a magnetar, is what they think actually pushed it.
Okay.
But we're going to hit the rim of it, and for some reason, it's a lot of junk in front of it. And it's coming here. It should. Nobody knows what's going to happen, definitely. But we're going to have some sort of effects. Now, ironically, I'm not worried about the rocks. It's the sheer energy increase that concerns me, because anything that comes into our solar system is going to affect the sun. We don't exactly have stable shields at the moment. Our magnetosphere is fluctuating big time.
Yeah.
And if the sun starts setting off some flares or CMEs or faster ejections of its radiation at a time when our shields are starting to wink out in certain areas, we're going to have a breach. And when we have that breach, people are going to get sick and hurt, right? There are already people in the world, just so everybody knows, you may not know this, but there are people who report to hospitals with something, akin to radiation sickness from severe exposure to radiation, high doses of radiation. This happens every day. So a person is normal one day. The next day, they're full of blisters. They go into the hospital, and it is from radiation poisoning, right? This happens frequently, or it's happening all the time now, and it's not exactly in one area. It doesn't happen in one area. You may have parts of a neighborhood that will come in, parts of a city that will come in. You may have one person out of a whole group that comes in, and they know what it is. It's identified as to what it is. But because it's happening more and more now, it lets us know that the magnetic field is not, it's fluctuating big time. And if it continues to fluctuate, Pascal, there's going to be more and more people with third-degree burns, radiation sickness, and the whole nine.
So, and I know our magnetosphere is very weak, and we've talked about that quite often. You've done a great job educating us on that, and that as it's weakening, the the UV rays and the cosmic rays that we're getting, the plasma, the CMEs, these things are breaking through and are heating up, melting the core of our Earth, going in through the poles and creating the poles are starting to melt. All these things we're starting to understand. But it's let me ask you this question. Some of the people are asking, on January 5th, will we see this cloud that enters?
No. But we may have some sort of effect from in the sun itself. We may have some sort of effect in the sun itself. So now keep in mind, if we say the shields, our magnetic shielding, right? Say it drew back 25%, right?
Okay.
You know what that means for us here on Earth?
No.
All of us would have radiation sickness. Wherever the sun hits, we'd have radiation sickness. This is the sun at minimal activity, right? With the slowest winds possible, it would still just about kill us. I think that's what people don't understand. Without the shielding, right, we die within a day. One day, all of us would be dead. The sun without a flare, without any ejections, with minimal solar winds, without our shielding, the Earth would burn up in one day. One day. So it's only the shielding, right, that stops all that radiation, those hot radioactive winds from smacking into the Earth. And the shielding around the Earth is designed in a way to pull all that radiation, those highly charged particles, to the North or South Pole. And then it goes inside the Earth. Of course, it's processed, and then the process of the Earth takes place. The Earth emits that energy back out. The Van Allen belts are part of that, and part of that process, and there we are. But if the shielding starts to buckle and collapse, as has already been identified at the beginning of the year, we're going to be in trouble. There have already been places impacted by this. There have been people impacted by this.
Will that create the pole shifts, or is there something else causing that?
I doubt that the magnetosphere collapse or fluctuations in the magnetosphere will cause a shift, because it is the Earth that creates the magnetosphere in the first place. The Earth is huge, but an external object that would have, say it would have maybe 3-4 times bigger than our moon, if it came in close proximity to us, and it was not a moon, it will certainly cause us to begin to shift in ways we don't want to. And then at that point, we're going to have a bigger problem, because without that centrifugal force, without the forces still maintaining themselves around the rim of the Earth, we're going to have water dislodged in hours. That's not good.
What?
Because if the Earth slowed down just say it slowed down, right? Do you not know that the coastlines could rise 30, 40, 50, 60 feet? Right now, they would rise. Because at the rim of the Earth is not perfectly round. It's spinning. And so there's a big rim of water, right, around the rim of the Earth.
Like
where all
the
the
equator?
forces meet.
Well, like the equator?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the equator, where all the forces meet.
Okay.
And that rotation keeps the sea levels somewhat,
stable,
manageable.
Yeah.
But if it ever stops, all that water is going to collapse. There's no centrifugal force to keep that water rim up. That's about a 300-foot rim of water. I estimate that actually in real terms, it's more like 3,000, not 300. Given the circumference of the Earth and the actual shape of the Earth by laser measurements, it's a lot of water. And as the Earth sputters, we're going to have changes in sea level without tsunamis, without earthquakes, without volcanic eruptions.
Is that the coastal flooding?
Storms.
Is that the coastal flooding you're talking about?
It could be part of it.
Okay.
It could be part of it. I know that that magma is on the move, and deep in the earth there are large vats of water. I mean, large vats of water. Right. It's why it's important for people to see the earth in scale. I think they would be surprised to see how, if you could stack all the cities we have on top of each other, or just see how high a plane flies in relation to a true scale of the earth, it would look like the plane is smashed flat on the surface. That's what it would look like. So the planes fly 25, 35,000 feet, right? If you were to take a basketball and to look at a basketball like the earth, the plane, you wouldn't be able to see the plane because the plane would be so close to the ground, you wouldn't be able to see it if that were the true scale, right? That plane would have to fly much higher before you can actually, make a difference between it and everything else.
Mike from the World's with us tonight, folks. Talking about the Code Red. I mean, the Code Red is what the scientists are warning, that the climate change has pushed the Earth's vital signs to record extremes. Mike's been telling us for years of the extreme weather conditions, the events that are going to come up on the Earth. We've been watching it develop just like clockwork, just exactly as you've explained it. Now that we're into this events that are coming up on the solar system, I guess is the way to say that, January 5th and other dates. Mike, I guess another question would be, if this static atmosphere, does this January 5th event, is this the beginning of the static, the energy,
Well, we already have a particle increase in the atmosphere.
Okay.
Particle increase has allowed the atmosphere to, it's the pressure differences are allowing storms to carry more and more moisture, right? We also have that in turn is causing this particle increase in the upper atmospheres is causing a warming cycle to take place. A long time ago, our atmosphere was normal, which means we didn't have a high particle count in the ionosphere. As more and more particles come in from this dirty part of existence, as they continue to come in, they get trapped in the upper portions of our atmospheres, which means, right, you go from a part of the atmosphere of the Earth, which may have had a particle one every 2 or 3 miles, to about 1 to 2 or 3 inches, right? You can carry heat. Now here's the trick: it is incredibly hot up there, right? But you would not feel that heat. Nobody can perceive that heat because there's not enough particles in that area to carry the heat, right? The particle count's increasing. It's 4,000 degrees up there.
What?
Right? So as particles come in, it's going to act like an infrared umbrella. Now, I know a lot of people think that methane is solely responsible for capturing and scattering infrared. Part of that is true, but the particle count in the upper atmospheres is starting to really make a difference in friction, right? That really comes into play when anybody from Air Force Command will, they'll probably tell you that they're having to make some real adjustments, not just any adjustments, but real adjustments because of friction. So they have to do fuel computations differently when they do burns and things like that, because the density in the upper atmospheres, it's increasing, and it's going to get really hot.
Is that why the drag? Right, so, I mean, we hear about satellites being sent up, and then the drag can affect them. Is the drag?
In parts of the atmosphere, there's already, you have some density in parts of the atmosphere, but the ionosphere is a part of the atmosphere where normally there is nothing there. There's nothing to carry the heat. All that's changing, and as it changes, we're not going to be able to have spacecraft up there. We're not.
Wow.
If that particle count continues to increase, Pastor Paul, we're going to see stuff falling to Earth fast. We're going to see it, and that particle count's increasing. We cannot have satellites in space in that area with a dense ionosphere. That will never happen. All the craft would burn up. They'd burn up. So at some point, we're also going to see a lot of things in the atmosphere come right down to the surface of the Earth. It's unavoidable, and it's happening right now. It's building up right now.
So
every day, it's accumulating particles. So it's like a clock, and that clock is counting down. Even in that event by itself, that is catastrophic.
So even though our world is based on GPS and satellites and and all of this technology. Are we aware of the fact? I mean, I'm sure we're aware. You're just telling us we're aware
Sure
that.
they are.
So what's the backup
Sure
plan
they are.
here? I mean,
There is no backup. You can't have a backup with that because, well, it's like wintertime, right? It's like
yeah.
wintertime. Everybody has to change the wardrobe for wintertime when you're dealing with snow. Well, we have another cycle coming upon us, and every time this happens, stuff comes out of the sky. It will clean up everything. That is guaranteed. It's gonna things will burn. That we're going into a different place. It takes a long time to prep for. There is no plan B. There's just
So
no
is Plan
plan
B
B.
the underground kingdoms they're building, the underground cities? Is this the coming apocalypse plan for mankind? While we're
That since World War II, right?
yeah,
It was serious. It was serious in World War II because they started learning about these things from Tibet. They started learning from Tibet
Tibet,
because they found machinery in Tibet. Yeah,
Tibet.
Hitler took a lot of machinery from Tibet. That makes no sense, does it?
Wait a
You
minute,
see how much?
time out, Mike, time out. Wait. Tibet? You mean the monks up there in Tibet? Or are you?
Yes,
Okay,
Hitler took a lot of machinery from Tibet.
so whose machinery was that?
It's been here. It's just old, but evidently it's something.
It's
But
ancient
he wouldn't took
technology.
everything. They protect that stuff. One of them was there were things like I don't know what they called them, biological amplifiers or something like that, but they would enhance the human body somehow, right? As far as how we think. There were other objects there, relics and things like that. I'm sure that somebody out there talks about this stuff. You guys have to forgive me. I don't listen to too many people online, but except for Pastor Paul from time to time. But
Appreciate that.
they collect. But you see how difficult this is to talk about because
Yeah.
there's no real. I mean, somebody would say, the average person will say, well, where's the proof of that? I don't know. And then you get into this long discussion about, when they found it, what it potentially led to, this, that, and the other
Yeah. Okay.
hypotheticals.
So in other words,
And
what you're saying is you don't listen to a lot of the talking heads on YouTube and line.
no,
You
I
'cause
listen
you
to none of them.
no, because you don't have to. You're getting access to information that
Yeah.
we're not privy to. So so you're kind of like, well, I wonder how much they know and they don't know yet. Is that what I kind of hear you say that sometimes?
I have heard, you know what? I've heard, because you were making those CDs, I went and listened to a couple of people, and I'll tell you this.
Okay.
And I don't know everything. I was just unfortunate enough to be thrown into certain parts of things.
Right.
And once you know, you can't unlearn that stuff. But I've heard people talk, and if they would stop criticizing and listen, right? Obviously, if somebody's trying to help somebody else gathering up information on the past, they're not going to get everything correct like they took inventory on the stuff,
Right.
right? But because the biblical principles are sound and because our motive is right, some of these guys have got some real information, and every time I hear them speak that critical real information, we're talking about things people are going to have to deal with. Right? People are going to have to deal with this stuff. If they can sit and deny it all day, that's not going to help them, right? That's why I don't waste time on anybody who would just give an instant rebuttal to things. They're going to have to deal with it. They're going to end up crying, sit in a corner of their house, afraid to go anywhere. But you've got some folks. I'm telling you, they have some things that people need to know if people would just open their ears. If they wouldn't be a critic so much and say, okay, let me apply what I can. Simply, let me apply what I can. Even half the stuff I talk about, you can't apply a theory of some future event. But what you can do is consider the scriptures, right? You can consider prophecy and say, okay, well, I know this, and that could be something with prophecy. Just in the event it comes, right?
Yeah, for instance,
then if it comes, you're prepped for it.
I mean,
but there are some things that people are not ready to. They're just they can't. I can't even go there on this broadcast or any other broadcast because they're not really prepared to discuss it. And I'll tell you this: it's gonna be a very unconventional end. If people think that they're gonna face conventional things that have been in science books, things that we just talk about in space, and that's it, they're wrong. They're gonna be horrified at what they're gonna face. But if they're spiritually built up, then by Christ they'll get through. Only by Christ. Without Christ, there is no getting through.
Well, let's take for
There's none.
instance. I talk about Revelation 8:8 with the two deep impacts, the wormwood effect. I mean, when I read that in the Bible, I believe it. Okay, I don't question. Well, I don't know if this could be true. Maybe maybe John on the Isle of Patmos was delirious. No, I believe what he saw. Okay, I believe what he saw. He's doing his best to explain it in a vision. So I say, okay, there's definitely going to be two deep impacts. If that may just be two he saw, there may be multiple. What could cause that? Well, I don't know what could cause that. So I start asking people like you, start looking around and trying to say, what is it we do know now, 2,000 years later? So, Mike, is there knowledge now that would support these impacts to hit the earth and create the damage?
And demonstration. People are likely to see an ocean impact pretty soon, right? They won't doubt it after then. An ocean impact that nobody can track right now. Do people understand that in 2016 they set a budget forward so they could, because Congress wanted to map 90% of the heavens for near-Earth asteroids. But here is the clause: near-Earth asteroids that were above 120 meters, right? Nothing below 120 meters.
Why?
Nothing, because it's very difficult to see anything that's smaller than 120 meters. Here's the problem. Everything that has surprised us on this earth when man has been here has been under 120 meters. Tunguska, right? Tunguska. That thing had the power to flatten two cities, New York City twice, right?
Yeah.
And that thing was only, they estimate now, it was only 28 meters. 28 meters.
What?
28 meters. That's it. It was 28. All the near Earth objects are above a certain size. They will not and cannot track objects smaller than a certain size until it's too late. And guess what? They continue. You have scientists out there, seasoned scientists, are saying it's not the stuff we can track or the orbits we can follow that's going to get us. It's those small ones, right? The ones in that 20 to 80 meter range that are going to pummel us. They're going to pummel us. How do they know this? Because they have emergencies in the ISS and other things they have emergencies for. Space Command is working overtime. JPL is working overtime. NASA overtime. ESU overtime. All these agencies are working overtime because they have to come up with some sort of mitigation plan just about every single 3 times a week, so people won't die, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to be so lucky because most of the objects going into this part of the solar system of existence, they're going to be around that 80 meter range. They're going to be about that size. So it's not going to be the big, 5 mile wide thing that's everybody can see. That's not going to get us. What's going to get us is something 80 meters.
All the little
right?
stuff. So
something that's 100 meters. A 100 meter object, right? And if it's alkaline, if it's steel, it's still going to have the impact of it's going to have the impact that, well, put it this way, if it hit in the Gulf, it would destroy Texas all the way up to parts of Michigan. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, how about that? Okay, Mike, so let's take a look at this for a second. So, we know that this asteroid, Apophis, coming in 2029, we know this thing's about 1,200 meters, okay? And your point is, don't worry about that, or I've heard you say that we got bigger things to worry about. Is it because, even let's say this, they're now saying that Apophis will come within 19,666 miles from the surface of the earth when it goes by on April 13th, 2029. It's not really Apophis that we worry about hitting us. It's all the little stuff that's coming with it. Am I right in saying that?
It's that. It's an electromagnetic tug that we've never had before. It is the sun's activity that will likely double as far as being damaging every year forward. It's going to continue to just get really chaotic. We're already having gravitational anomalies here on the Earth because any twin system, you're going to have some sort of distribution of forces, which is going to knock the central force of all celestial mechanics is going to be thrown off because of this twin system. and we're already feeling those effects. We're going to have volcanism is going to be off the scale. We're on track, right, to have some pretty disastrous things. The activity in the earth and the pressure buildup that's constantly just smashing and blowing up sensors is it's going to breach the surface. It will most certainly happen. We also we have sea rise is going to be a big issue. Tarsan is still out there. Tarsan team is still out there trying to find. These guys have been funded big time, but there's no solution to their problem because these icebergs have lost most of their anchoring ability to stay where they are, and they will break off. And if one of them, when it breaks off, half of South America is going to be gone. Half of it is going to be that thing will lose a tsunami that will cover everything in the southern hemisphere of the earth. It's not going to cover all land masses and drown them, but the water is going to come up to a pretty high level. Plus, that stagnant water is full of bacteria, right? They have core samples, Paris Paul. They keep taking these core samples, and they're noticing bacteria and viruses and everything else. And guess what they do when they heat up? They spring back to life. I did tell you about those scientists who were they were doing the core samples, and one of them within one day had to get his legs amputated from a very vicious flesh-eating bacteria, right?
Whoa!
And then this happened again and again and again, right? So you have things like that are ancient, right? These things can live for millions of years, or how people can debate about the years. Let's say they're old, they're at the bottom of the ice, and they're not dead.
They're not dead. Ancient viruses that have come up on the earth that have been buried by ice through the glaciers and the ice age, but those viruses are still alive. And as the earth heats up and melts this down, it releases these viruses on the earth.
Yes.
Now, Mike, there's something else you brought up. You said that you're working on a map.
Yes.
I think a volcanism map. Am I right?
Yes.
And you hope to have,
because
you hope to have that one ready for the Deep Impact webinar.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Pat Paul, there are. Listen, in the U.S. alone, there are places. Let's just say that if somebody gave you a faulty forecast, and the next day your town was just messed up by tornadoes, you would have wished you had better forecast.
Right.
Well, let's go ahead and face it. Some of the map systems that are out there are very old, and they don't have the new data. There are new fault lines in America, right?
Okay.
There are new discoveries in America. They've been digging in America. They found lots of things, and they have disproven other things. This map reflects a difference in Yellowstone that just does not reflect in common day literature. It just does not. It's going to be out because it's in peer-reviewed journals. It will be out, I'm probably saying 2023, maybe mid-2023. But there are other volcanoes to consider now. Yellowstone is not by itself. The East Coast has a monster. And there are other things just like that. So you have places that were oblivious. They thought they were impervious to any earthquake damage, right? Wrong. It's not the truth. Roanoke, Virginia, right? Going all the way up to Charleston, West Virginia. There's some bad cracks in that place going up there, right? The Appalachian chain has revealed several anomalies that are going to cost, it's just going to cost lives. You have things in Colorado that make it a not so stable place, which is one of the reasons they had to relocate CNC from Colorado somewhere else. The White House did the same thing. They're sitting on very volatile land right there. They can't stay there. There are other things, other cracks, magma chambers all over the place, and this stuff is starting to breach. I wouldn't be surprised if all the ancient volcanoes, that chain of volcanoes going up to Washington State, would awaken in 2023. I mean, really awaken. I wouldn't be surprised.
Whoa!
Some of the volcanoes they thought that were extinct, they said they never have life in 1,000 years. They have life right now. And the same people that these communities of folks who deny possibilities for the sake of posterity to fill their pockets or prestige or whatever they're doing, they're just proven to be idiots every single time.
Because they're not, because no matter what they've said, it's getting disproved because the events keep happening.
Every year they say, well, this will never happen because, it'll be 1,000 years before that happens. And then it happens. They come on the news and say, well, there's that 1,000-year event. Well, what do you mean? Don't call it a 1,000-year event if we just had the event yesterday. And we're going to have another one, tomorrow. What you call it 1,000? That's part of the ego they carry. They don't want to be wrong, right?
Right.
They don't want to be. There's no humility, no meekness in these people because they're thinking about themselves. A person that does not want to be wrong is only thinking about him or herself. When you're thinking about somebody else, you care less if you're wrong or not. You want that person safe. And so, that's why this map is coming out, because I guarantee you right now, people are in places that will eventually see a collapse. If they're going to be places in the U.S. that collapse, and the places they thought would collapse are going to stay standing, right? So things are a bit backwards. Why? Because they have new sensors in the ground. They have better technology.
Yeah.
They can see more. They
Yeah.
have dug deeper, right? They have better. They have archived some of the stuff that was archived that was supposed to be new and late breaking turned out to be, wrong. And they don't like to admit when they're wrong. And so this updated map will give a better picture of what people really face.
So during our webinar, Deep Impact, folks, which is going to be, of course, December 2nd, I look forward to interviewing Mike and him bringing this map forward for us. You're going to help people learn for the first time where some of these critical areas are. Volcanism, and I take it, and these are earthquake cracks, fault lines, right? New fault
lines. Yeah. New fault lines.
It's
absolutely.
It's going to be a game changer, I take it.
It'll be a beginning. It'll be fought naturally, right? It's going to be fought naturally, but it will be a beginning. Somebody's going to see it. Somebody's going to not deceive themselves.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. I know our people that are going to be watching that webinar are looking forward to it, Mike. You've always brought things forward that I think gets out ahead of everyone else and gives at least our people who are interested in prophecy and interested of the coming of the Lord and the things that lead up to his coming, giving us a heads up. It doesn't bring fear. It just it just increases my faith and gives me more info to prepare, to really prepare, and to get others to prepare. Is that what you agree with that?
Yeah. Plus, I have a heart for parents, and when people have children, right? There's nothing a parent would not do to keep that child safe. And so, but if that parent has flawed information or old information that proved to be not so correct, they're not going to help. No matter how good their intent is, they're not going to protect that child. I would say ultimately, hopefully that parent's heart is in the Messiah, because a Messiah, if we have our ears open, we can be instructed on a continuous basis. But if we shut our ears down and start to just shut out anything concerning what people are about to see, because the Lord is giving us everything. We have storms. We have these oddball earthquakes that are taking place when they shouldn't. And have you noticed that the storms come, the earthquakes come, and the volcanoes erupt every time a statement of arrogance is given? Every single time a statement of arrogance is given by some, university or some coalition over here, something happens and it proves them wrong. As though the Lord is saying, oh, well, no. But I believe that's for us, because in the Bible, the world, it says the world knew nothing until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be, right? I know that little part, but you know what that tells me? They're not going to notice, Pastor Paul. That means a message is not for them. It's for those who can hear.
Amen.
Right?
Those who have an ear to hear.
That's right. Because I can't go to somebody who can't. Well, if somebody can't see, why would I go to them and say, hey, man, look at this? I can't do that. And a person who is deaf, I can't say, listen to what I'm saying. I can't say that. No. Right? So if I speak words, it's for those who hear. If I give you a sign, it's for those who are hard of hearing. Right? Yep. Those who can hear words don't need a sign. No. Those who are hard of hearing, they have to have something to get their attention so they would hear the rest of the
And that's
words.
The mercy of God, really, in a lot of ways, isn't it? Disprove, like you said, they speak arrogance. God says, let me show you. And that's really God still showing mercy. He's still saying, look,
It really is.
you
It
know,
really is.
look. And
I'm a first-hand witness to that.
okay.
When being stubborn, not listening, thinking that I have the answer. The Lord, he got me a couple of times. So I gave that up. It was stupid though, because we get in these traps. We get ourselves in these traps of arrogance.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, you look back and you say, why was I even arrogant? What was I thinking about there? What was I thinking about?
Yeah. Well, we have a tendency to do that, all of us. A
We
little
do.
bit, some of that's pride that we need to let go of, and become humble and listen, and listen to wisdom, and listen to the Lord, listen to the Spirit of God, read the Bible, believe it,
That's
and
right.
then listen to others who are out there trying to help us. That makes sense. And so, Mike, I tell you, I can't thank you enough. I really think tonight was a great broadcast, because when I see the scientists come out, or I see articles, and some of this is sensationalized when they say code red, but then again, I look beyond that. I say, wait a minute, there's something going on. There's too many things happening. There is a sense of urgency that needs to be put out there, and because that's how people get caught unaware when there's no warning. The Bible says
That's
that
right.
we're watchmen. So he sets us a watchman on the wall. We see something come. If we don't tell the people, he'll require their blood on our hands.
That's right.
And and I know you've been very faithful of saying people need to know some stuff. There's some stuff people need to know before it's too late. And
Absolutely.
appreciate you doing that. Really do.
Well,
Thank
Pastor
you.
Paul, I'll tell you what, I'll do it every time I can.
Well, I know you will, and I appreciate that. Thank you for coming on tonight and being a part of a great program tonight. Really appreciate it.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. It's always an honor.
Thank you. The honor's all mine, and we love you, brother. God bless.
All right. God bless.
Bye-bye. Mike, from